Back on now with Aron Silverstein and James Curtis, our guests from CMH Label Group, the team behind Bridgerton's classical pop covers. So Bridgerton's music supervisor is, of course, the very greatly respected Alexandra Patsavas, and you'd worked with her previously, hadn't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We were approached by Alexandra and her firm Chop Shop it seems like forever ago, it might be 10 years now, that we did Gossip Girl. They were looking for, there was this big wedding in one of the last seasons of Gossip Girl where one of the main characters, Blair, she's getting married, and they wanted, again, this kind of contemporary string quartet, because that's very much part of who we are and what we do, whether intentionally or otherwise. People love hearing these romantic covers of pop songs and modern music. So they were looking for not only a string quartet to have the music featured in the show, but we were also on camera very briefly, and we're lingering somewhere in the background at Blair's wedding, doing a couple of covers. We did a Pat Benatar song, In Excess tune. And that was also one, it was one of our first sort of appearances on camera for people to see us, but it was also definitely one of the biggest placements we've received up until that time.
Oh, amazing. And so how different was that process of working on Gossip Girl to Bridgerton, or maybe how similar was it?
A little different in the sense that initially they knew exactly what song. When Gossip Girl happened, they had one song in mind. They wanted to do one song with us with the potential of doing maybe a second. And I don't want to throw the writer, artist, publisher under the bus, but essentially the song they wanted to do, the publisher was like, no, we don't let people use that song anymore for any purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And so they came back to us and said, well, we can't use this. We have another song in mind, but it's not in your catalog, which is the Pat Benatar cover, cover of her song, We Belong. And we said, well, we'll cover it. We'll cover it for you right now. You want it? And so we worked up that. And while we were working that up, they also saw that we had this NXS cover, and they're like, yes, we're definitely going to take a second song. So that one was very much like they knew what they wanted. They couldn't get what they wanted initially, and so they commissioned us to do one, and then they had a second song that they pulled from the catalog. This, with Bridgerton, was a little bit more open-ended. They knew that we had this extensive catalog, and Aron can speak to this because he's first contact for so much of this. But this was a little bit different in the sense that they came to us and it was a little bit more open-ended. They had a few ideas, but they just gave us the brief, and then we kind of reacted to that, sending our selection. They had some ideas. And it was a real collaboration in the sense of trying to figure out what was going to work, but there were no commissions involved. And it was a little bit more, it also took a little longer to figure out. The Gossip Girl thing happened very quickly. But Aron, I don't know if you want to speak.
Yeah, well, speaking on Bridgerton in particular, that brief came in, and and maybe this speaks to larger, sync advice in general, but briefs will come in, and the idea is that you read it down and you're there to work with production. Like, they've got a bigger picture in mind. They've got a whole arc. Your song isn't the only one that's being placed, and you're slotting into this bigger picture that they've created in their painting, and they've worked over and over and over again. And finally, they might come to the musicians or the artists and say, you know what, this is really going to be the cherry on top for us. What kinds of songs can you help paint this picture, And so that's the way I approach the briefs, and I always tap James for help. And we have a few other people that help me put playlists together and sort of send it back to a production company or say, hey, that's the type of brief you're looking for. What about these 10 tracks? What do you think about this? This is a good jumping off point. And so, it was a bit more open, but we also fully understood that Bridgerton had a tone set, and that we were going to just elevate that as best as we can, Yeah,
the brief very much outlined, this is a romantic show. This is the plot. It is a very female character-driven show. It's definitely going to be erring on the side of cooler and more contemporary. So the first round of songs we sent them, some of them might have been a little too indie and a little too cool, but a lot of those first wave of songs were informed by that. We were looking for female artists that we covered. We were looking for contemporary artists we covered. We were trying to slant things a little bit more romantic, maybe a little playful. And so you, to Aaron's point, you have to work with the brief you're given, and hopefully the people who are handing you those briefs have as much detail as we were given for Bridgerton, because it was a lot for us to play with, essentially.
Yeah, which is super helpful when they give you enough boundaries to work within, and then you can kind of push a little and break some rules and throw a few tracks in there, like, ooh, maybe, and you try, you see what sticks. But yeah, I would say if you're getting briefs coming in from a production, like, read it and make sure you're really responding. Like, if they're looking for something and you don't necessarily fit the brief, don't force it, But luckily, when they come to us, there's a very pretty clear understanding of, like, we're looking for these kinds of strings, which makes our job much easier. It's like, great, we've got them. So yeah, I think it worked out. There was an openness, and they were willing to work with us, and we pitched, and it all kind of, came together. It was great. So.
Well, you've segued very nicely into my next question, which is all about the brief. So I think you've covered half of it already. But before I go there, did you say an NXS song? But I'm an Aussie. I have to know. Which song was it?
It was Never Tear Us Apart. Such a good cover. I mean, we did a live video of it. It's up on YouTube right now. It's one of my favorite pieces of music. I mean, I'm a big crier. Aaron probably knows this. I'm very emotional. And I'll tell you, one of the I watched that Michael Hutchence documentary when that came out, and I was just like bawling by it. It's so I love NXS so much. I mean, Kick is one of the great albums of the 80s. It is.
I agree. And Aaron said that you're a great laugher. So, like, the two of you are really like a match made in heaven. Yeah, one laugh, one cries.
Yeah, the meetings go off the rails very quickly. It's just, but yeah, and a part of it is, us loving the artists matters. You know what I mean? That's part of the A&R. And again, James can touch on this because that's sort of what he spearheads. But the briefs come in, and it's the greatest feeling when you've done what you already do and it just fits what they need, right? There's a perfect sort of, like, we're looking for this kind of thing. Oh, VSQ does exactly that. And that's part of the briefs and the A&R and the curation. It's like we approach the original recording artist with a sense of respect and say, this is something we want to, do our own take and our own spin. Because, like, I listen to the original or the recording on my own time, and then VSQ does their cover. And so it's a cool, I think a sincere kind of homage, to the original recording artist. And then we just put our spin on it. And if it happens to work for the brief, that's a great feeling. And it just locks in, and we're all on the same page, and production wants it. We want it to happen, and it just moves in the right direction. So, that's kind of what happened with Bridgerton. So,
yeah. So for all the artists and composers out there who have never seen a brief at that level, the level of Bridgerton or Gossip Girl or something like that, can you just kind of segment it out for us? What does it look like? And I know briefs vary, but what did it look like for Bridgerton?
Yeah. I mean, they vary, but they don't. I mean, a brief should basically cover the same amount of material, from one brief to another. And the idea is, this is who we are. This is the project we're working on, whether it's film, television, advertisement, here's the title of it, and here's a synopsis. We're just breaking down the actual content of, this thing. And then here's the specific use maybe we're thinking of for you, right? There's a scene here. Here's the scene description. We're interested in either a particular track, or this is the kind of feel we're going for, right? Up-tempo, happy, uplifting versus somber and dark, and, make it feel like there's tension in the scene, right? And so the more details you get from production, the easier it is for us to kind of separate what tracks in our catalog work and what don't, right? And then there's some other details, right? Is it for television versus, like a video on demand, Netflix servicing that type of, so you figure out, like, where is it going to live? Is it just an ad online? And so some of those details are mostly covered in each brief. And it just informs the sync department, the sync team, like what production's looking for, which is super helpful for us. And then I take that information, I forward it to whoever I need to internally. We come up with a curated playlist and we pitch it back, you know. Sorry, that's puppy in the house.
Yeah, I thought, wow, how did you do that? You kind of threw your voice over there and it came out as a puppy.
But yeah, the briefs generally cover that kind of information.
Right. James, anything to add there?
No, I mean, again, it's called a brief for a reason. It's usually something very simple, almost like a memo that outlines the basic usage. And then, you know, once everything else is decided, then there's a much larger paperwork. But really, it's a brief says it all.